To the average gamer perusing Steam charts, Warhammer 40,000 Darktide may look like a dead or dying game. Just look at where we started back when the game launched in 2022, and look at where we are now in 2024. Don't let these numbers deceive you, though. Every one of these players is a devout cultist addicted to Darktide's insanely good gameplay. I'm Jeficus, and I love Warhammer Video Games, and I also consider myself one of Darktide's most devoted and addicted cultists. The primary reason why people are still playing Darktide is because nowadays, the game actually has great replayability, and it's slowly getting better. This is due to a few major updates to the game. The introduction of endgame through Auric and Maelstrom missions, a massive class overhaul, and a revamp of the penance system. The order that these updates were released in seems to indicate that Fatshark actually has a plan to not only fix Darktide, but also make it a certified banger that will eventually appeal to a much broader audience than Vermintide 2 did. So let's analyze how this is actually happening and talk about the general state of the game. First off, one of Darktide's main problems at launch was its lack of endgame content. There wasn't much to do when you got your character to max level except grind for gear that couldn't really be used in any challenging content because none existed at the time. Additionally, back when the game released, there really wasn't any story to look forward to either. The narrative of Darktide was, and still is, one of the weakest aspects of the game. Plus, Fatshark has one of the slowest content release schedules in the entire gaming industry. Even if the game had a gripping story, it wouldn't be enough to keep players engaged for months at a time. In 2022, the lack of content would become evident immediately, and the community wondered why many of the features that were already in Vermintide 2, Fatshark's previous game, were missing from Darktide. Thankfully, Fatshark started to curve the bad direction that the game was going in by introducing Auric and Maelstrom missions. These missions introduced modifiers or conditions to missions that add a level of endgame challenge that is fun to experience and is really engaging. The system is dynamic enough to give Darktide hundreds or even thousands of hours of replayability, and it provides Fatshark with an easy way to facilitate new content in the game. Every time a new modifier or condition is added to Darktide, Fatshark is able to combine different Auric modifiers with Maelstrom modifiers to create more engaging content. This is the first of various systems where Fatshark established a foundation that they're going to be able to build on as they release more updates for the game. Also, the Nurgle-blessed Monstrous Shock Troop Gauntlet Auric Maelstroms, or 3VEGs, are some of the most challenging and engaging pieces of video game content in anything that I've played, and I hope we continue to see even harder and crazier content get added to the game. 3VEGs are a fantastic baseline for combining fun and challenge. Unfortunately, because this is Fatshark, there are still several problems with this endgame system. First of all, you aren't able to queue up for these by yourself in a private lobby. You need a mod in order to get into maps by yourself, and this prevents you from earning materials and completing penances. Additionally, you can't choose the maps or modifiers that you want. You have to wait for the specific maps and modifiers that you want to play to rotate through a selection of maps that you have no control over. This is absolutely terrible because, like I just said, 3VEGs are some of the funnest content that I've done in any game, but I'm not able to run them as many times as I want to. We should be able to choose whatever maps and modifiers we want and have a quick play button that just randomly throws us into lobbies if we feel like letting the game decide our fates. Or just make it so that the Auric Maelstrom modifiers always include weakened bosses in some capacity. Regardless, Auric and Maelstrom missions are still a great endgame system that enhances the replayability of the game well beyond where it was when Darktide launched. But the update to the game that has made the most difference to how people play and enjoy the game is definitely the class overhaul. The class overhaul introduced talent trees for each class that essentially tripled the amount of playstyles available in the game. This was a massive departure to what we had when the game launched, which was an adaptation of the system that existed in Vermintide 2. Except you need to keep in mind that Vermintide 2 had 12 playable careers when it launched. Darktide only had 4. When Darktide launched, it actually felt like we'd regressed compared to what was in the previous game, but it's much better now. Talents provide you with the ability to sculpt builds that can use the exact same abilities but play drastically differently due to the swapping of a couple of key talents and your weapon setup. For example, I primarily run 2 builds on my veteran that center around the plasma gun and the Hellbore lasgun. My builds are identical, with the exception of one talent that I move around to give each gun a much needed pick-me-up. And yes, I'm aware that you can animation cancel to reload the plasma gun faster, but I'm too lazy to do it every single time that I reload the weapon, and that extra talent point really isn't going to make or break the build anywhere else. Anyways, I would argue that the talent trees provide more flexibility than Vermintide 2's career system because they enable you to completely build around your favorite weapons. A good example of this would be the Columnus Infantry Autogun, which everyone except for the Ogryn can build around. This gun is an absolute machine, but trying to kill gunners from far away could be a hassle given the thing's poor stability. On the Veteran, I can solve that problem a couple of different ways, and it all comes down to personal preference. I could take the Executioner sensibility to both reduce my spread and recoil and increase my zoom and damage to deal with the gunners from afar, or I could take the Voice of Command ability and just run up to the gunners with the Strip Down blessing on my weapon and crowd control the entire group of gunners before killing them. In fact, there are even more variations to think about here. Do I take Onslaught and let the Columnus take care of crushes for me, or do I take crack grenades for that? Maybe I don't worry about either of those two options and I just rely on my dagger, shovel, or power sword to deal with a specific type of enemy. The point is that Fatshark deserves a huge W for releasing the talent system because it gives you so much control over your playstyle. And I know that in a game like Darktide, a meta will always develop, and people will always try to run the best builds or talents in the game, but slight variances are always going to exist in these playstyles because of the dynamic nature of the game. With more fine-tuning and balancing, the system has the potential to create much more playstyle variety than what is available in Vermintide 2. In fact, we might be there already. All in all, the system is in a really good place right now, and I'm willing to bet that most people who get hooked on Darktide do so because they enjoy experimenting with bringing different builds into endgame content. Anyways, these are all updates that released in 2023. What's been going on in 2024? In April of 2024, Darktide's penances, which act as the game's achievement system, got a major revamp. One of the main complaints that the community has regarding Darktide is its lack of earnable cosmetic items. The revamp added penances that you could complete to earn gear for your class, and even added cosmetics that are earnable for all classes by increasing your overall penance score. This encourages a ton of replayability because you're encouraged to play each of the classes in the game to earn as many penances as you can, since your overall penance score unlocks more cosmetic items for you. The implication of this update is that whenever more content is added to the game in the future, we're also going to get more tiers of rewards to chase since more penances will exist in the game. This is setting the stage for Fatshark's future updates to be much beefier because they've now established a foundation for an evolving reward system. This also means that whenever a new class is added to the game, if it ever happens, we should expect the class to have a couple of earnable cosmetics right off the bat. If Fatshark doesn't do this, then that would be pretty cringe. The Penance revamp was a pleasant update that we didn't want or expect, but was needed for the game to move forward in a sense. And that's not it for 2024. I'm doing a complete 180 on my previous take, and I'm calling it now. 2024 is going to be remembered as the year that Darktide was fixed because, truthfully, Fatshark is pretty close to repairing all of the game's fundamental supporting systems. Soon, we should be getting an itemization overhaul that should fix a lot of the community's primary issues with the game, assuming that Fatshark isn't completely tone deaf. Itemization is the most criticized element in Darktide right now, and I'd be pretty surprised if they dropped the ball on this one. Especially if you consider that each of the game's major updates after launch has either fixed or added really fundamental systems. The game felt like it was in early access in 2022, and with the release of itemization changes, we're finally going to be in version 1.0 in 2024. Additionally, we're going to be getting new missions, new enemies, new weapons, new conditions, and new features alongside balance updates throughout the rest of 2024. I'm calling it right now. In fact, I'm throwing the gauntlet down. If we don't get some sort of Tech Priest class added to the game this year, I'll delete all of my characters and start from scratch. I've got a feeling that Fatshark won't let me down, and if they do, it'll be pretty damn funny. Additionally, on June 25th, we're getting Secrets of the Machine God, which at the very least is going to introduce a new map and some new weapons. The bolt pistol is going to be introduced to the game, and if it sucks, I'll throw a pinned comment up on this video complaining about it. If it's good, I'll try to make a build around it and post that up on the channel if that's something you guys would be interested in. We've still got the rest of the year to look forward to, and plenty of opportunities for Fatshark to really surprise us if they decide to bring their A game. If you've made it this far into the video, consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy Warhammer Video Game news, reviews, and impressions. I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been Jeficus, and I'll see you in-game.